Hey everybody, welcome back. Week 10, Beatitudes. We are going to jump in straight into scripture today. Matthew chapter 5, 38 through 42.
You've heard that it is said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one that is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you, take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you.
One thing that is important when we're reading scripture, and we've talked about this in the past, is to understand the cultural context.
Correct.
Understand what's going on from the original storyteller's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the danger that we have today when we engage scripture is that we will take a passage and we will say, all right, we insert ourselves into the story, right?
Right.
And so we insert ourselves in the story, and so, we make it about us. But when we get the bigger picture of, who is the audience, who is Matthew writing to, who was Jesus talking to, what was the scenario surrounding Jesus' words here, then we kind of get a better picture of what's going on. All right, so Jesus, Sermon on the Mount, remember, he is just tearing away people's framework, what they've always believed, okay? And where they're getting their belief is from their religious leaders. So Jesus is clarifying the law. People hear the law from religious leaders, the rabbis, the scribes, the Pharisees, and so often these group of people find themselves in total opposition of what Jesus teaches, and it makes them mad, right? So Jesus, in his preaching, it's almost like it's passive aggressive, but he's just giving the truth, and it's rubbing the religious leaders the wrong way because it's going against what they teach.
Yeah.
This law that Jesus is referring to, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That is found in the book of Exodus. So if you flip to the Old Testament, look at Exodus 21, verse 24. That's where this is referenced, and it says, this is what it says. It says, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. At the end of verse 22, it says, and he shall pay as the judges determine. Okay, remember that, the judges determine, right?
Right.
Well, we flip over to Jesus' passage, and he's saying the Pharisees, the common teaching of the Pharisees they were like, no, you are the judge, jury, executioner. If somebody knocks your tooth out, you go up to them and you knock their tooth out. If somebody takes something from you, you go back and you go take something from them. Like, it's putting the law in our own hands, and that's not what that's not what the law in Exodus is condoning at all. So Jesus, in this passage, he's not doing away with law. He's not doing away with justice. And this is not a passage to where we go out and say, all right, there's no need for police because Jesus said this. There's no need for government because Jesus said this. There's no need for, a punishment system or a judicial system or a justice system at all, because of what Jesus said. No. Jesus is coming not on a broad scale here. He's zoning it in on us as individuals, or on people as individuals. So he's saying, do whatever it takes to have reconciliation in your relationships. This life, as we have talked about in the past, and as we see reading scripture, as we see in the law and the Ten Commandments, it's about relationships. It's about our relationship, how we relate to God, and it's about how we relate to each other. Okay, say if a burglar comes into my house and just wants to, harm me, harm my family, steal my stuff. Jesus is not saying, oh, open the door, come on in, burglar, have whatever you want. It's a buffet tonight.
Yeah.
That's not what Jesus is saying. These are established relationships that Jesus wants us to reconcile.
We're the small scale examples of what the gospel is all about. We think about Jesus, he's the ultimate sacrifice, but he went to the cross and knew what was going to happen. He knew that he would have to pay for the sins of everybody, but he also knew that he was doing it for people that really and truly hated him, and turned away from him, and that's us. We're the ones who sinned against him. We're the technical enemy in that scenario. So small scale, with our relationships, when these people wrong us, and we go back after them, and try to reconcile the relationship like Dave's talking about, that in itself is a representation of what Jesus wants us to do, because like I said, we're going after the people who wronged us the same way that Jesus came after us when we ultimately wronged him.
That is the picture of the gospel, and that's what Jesus wants. I believe that's what Jesus wants us to take from this passage.
And it's no coincidence that next week we're going to be talking about loving our enemies.
Yeah, exactly. It just flows right into.
Because you can't reconcile with people without love.
Yeah.
You can judge people with hate, and that's our tendency. But you can't like I said, you can't reconcile without love. Those have to coexist.
Yeah. Leave retaliation. We leave revenge. We leave all that up to God, who has that power.
Yeah.
And he does however he wants to. That's his in his control.
Right. And it's a small scale picture with our relationships. But if you think about it, if every Christian is able to do this, okay, the church on this earth is able to do that, it doesn't become so small scale. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It becomes this huge picture of the church loving the people on this earth, and then boom, the gospel is being shared.
Gospel being shared, more people are impacted, more people see Jesus and see him actually attractive. And
right.
You're telling me he can change my life?
Yeah.
He can make me into that kind of person.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
He can help me not care about the worries of the world and be in love with him. But Jesus is saying, if you really want to make an impact on your so-called enemies, somebody asks you to go 1 mile, you go 2 miles.
Yeah.
You do whatever's necessary to love people, and to then be able to establish credibility to tell them about Jesus. The application for you is to point people to Jesus no matter what it takes, even if it's hard. This idea of not seeking revenge and vengeance and retaliation, this whole thing of not executing what we think is right justice on our behalf, that's hard for humanity to do. Yeah, it's absolutely impossible. If you are trying to do this without Jesus, there's always some kind of underlying motive. But with Christ followers, Jesus is our motive. His message is our motive. The power that he has to change people becomes our motive.
Yep.
And therefore, he strengthens us to do and to be who he's calling us to be.
Yeah.
Maybe Sermon on the Mount, Beatitudes, following Jesus, getting back to the basics. That's what we want to do. And this can happen with your family, your friends, the people who you are acquainted with, the people who you don't even know, strangers on the street.
Yep.
This is how Jesus wants us to conduct our lives. He is faithful, he is good, and he empowers us to go and do just that. We love you guys. We have not forgotten y'all. We look forward to the day where we can get back together, and it's going to be sooner than later, Lord willing. So you are loved by us. You are loved by Jesus. We love you. Thanks for tuning in.